Well, it's 9:30. Do we have quorum, Ms. Stephanie?
Let me just finish admitting people in and we will do a quick check.
You just tell me when you're ready.
I will, thank you. You have a quorum, Chair.
Awesome. And Glenn, is this your first meeting as the vice chair?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. What a way to start.
Welcome. Okay, welcome everyone joining in. These are unprecedented times, and this is an unprecedented day for the Planning Committee. Today will be the first ever Planning Committee meeting conducted completely by virtual means, which is necessary in these times of physical distancing to keep us all safe and help flatten the curve of the COVID-19 pandemic. This meeting will be conducted through Zoom. Those who do not need to participate in the meeting can also watch it on the live stream to the city's YouTube channel. While we appreciate that many of you are quite comfortable using this technology by now, this is new territory in the way we conduct our official committee meetings. And we did not feel we were in a position today to accept oral submissions from public delegations during this meeting. Applicants and general public have been encouraged to submit comments in writing as City Hall is currently closed to the public. We will be working with the clerk's office to ensure that best practices and technologies are in place going forward to accept remote delegations where we need to. But for today, we will have to defer any items where delegations request live participation. Again, these are unusual and unprecedented times, and we want to make sure we have the time to learn and put the best measures in place for future meetings. So, on to the business at hand. This is a public meeting to consider the proposed comprehensive official plan and zoning bylaw amendments listed as items 1, 2, 8, 9, and 11 on today's agenda. For the items just mentioned, only those who make written submissions before the amendments are adopted may appeal the matter to the local planning appeal tribunal. In addition, the applicant may appeal the matter to the local planning appeal tribunal if council does not adopt an amendment within 90 days of receipt of the application for zoning and 120 days for an official plan amendment. To submit written comments on these amendments prior to their consideration by City Council, please email or call the committee coordinator, Melody Duffany, as noted on the committee agenda. And just before we get into the items, I'd just like to make a few quick comments about the process we'll follow here today. I will go through our normal consent agenda process to see which items the committee is prepared to carry. Following consent agenda, we will go first to item 4, the 15-minute neighborhoods presentation by the Tefler Business School. Following that, I would like to consider the remainder of the held items as listed on the agenda, with the exception that items 1 to 3 will be considered last, unless there are any objections from the committee with that approach. And I'll also remind you to please keep your microphones muted until you're called on to speak. I will provide each committee member with the opportunity to ask questions or comment on each item. Committee members will be called on first in ward order, followed by any other members of council who have joined the meeting in ward order. At any point, if you want to speak, you should use the raise hand Zoom function or physically raise your hand. Hello. And I will be, if your video feed is on, the committee coordinator, more than me, because I'm looking at about 16 piles of paper right here, will be watching for those cues. The usual 5-minute speaking limit will apply. This is all new, but all of the rest of these commission meetings will be better for it. So on with the agenda. Can we do a roll call so that everybody knows who is of the committee, first of all, and then any counselors that are signed on. So I could use the voting sheet if you want.
Go ahead.
Councillor Dudas is here, I see. Councillor Shirelli, are you here? Councillor Tierney? Councillor Leeper? Councillor Brockington here?
I'm here.
Thank you. Councillor Moffat? Councillor Hubley? Vice Chair Gower, and myself.
Morning.
Do we have other counselors on the line? Melody?
Yes, we have
Oh,
Council.
Jenna. Hi, Jenna.
Yes. Counselor
We-
Kavanaugh.
Kavanaugh. And Counselor Suds. Okay,
Councillor Fleury.
I'm also on, Jen.
okay, thank you. Thank you, Matt. Okay. All right, so we have no regrets other than who I haven't heard from yet, but that could change. Any declarations of interest? Wave your hands. No. Confirmation of minutes, February 13th minutes. It's a long time ago. Especially for this committee. We're good? Carrie?
Carrie.
Good. All right, so the first item is a temporary zoning bylaw amendment to permit park and cycle. First of its kind in Ottawa, non-accessory parking at Andrew Hayden Park, which is at 3169 Carling Avenue. And the purpose is sought for Andrew Hayden Park, so daytime commuters can park there and cycle downtown along the multi-use pathway. The change affects 12 out of the parking lot's 275 spaces, 2 of which would be combined into 1 accessible parking space. We're not having a presentation on this. We did receive correspondence from Trevor Hca yesterday on this item. Does anyone have any questions? Seeing none?
No questions.
Okay, so now we have to call for, I'll go through the list. All right. Or do you want to do that? Which is better? Which is easier for you, Melody?
Go ahead, Chair.
Okay, so on,
Chair, may I just make a comment?
who is that?
This is Counselor Kavanaugh.
Yes. Yes,
Thank you.
please, go ahead.
Thank you very much. I just want to say thank you to the team for putting this together. You mentioned that this will be park and cycle for downtown, but I expect it'll also will be for D&D as well, since of the proximity. But this was initiated by Councillor Wilkinson, and it doesn't really affect my ward directly. It will probably be much more of a help to those further west, such as Councillor Suds and Councillor Hubley. So anyway, just wanted to thank the staff for their work on this.
And thank you for reminding me that Councillor Wilkinson did initiate this.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, 12 spaces. I mean, I'm sure that we're going to see that there's going to be a huge demand for more than that. And we'll see
Yes.
we'll see. That's
Especially with, and I just wanted to remind people that D&D is not far away, and their parking shortage will probably make this attractive too. So that's just a reality check. Thank you.
Thank you very much for adding that. Okay, so as far as voting on the item goes, Councillor Dudas. Okay, that was a thumbs up, Melody.
Thank you.
Councillor Shirelli. Councillor Tierney.
Thank you.
Is he there?
Yes, that's a yes.
Okay, then, if you can see everybody's, right?
I can. Councillors, you can also unmute your mic when you want to register your yes or no.
Yeah, I'm just trying to see how I can see more people at the same time. So Councillor Tierney is a yes. Councillor Leeper?
Yes.
Councillor Brockington?
Yes.
Councillor Moffat?
Yes.
Councillor Hubley? Vice Chair Gower?
Yes.
And myself, yes. Is Councillor El Shantiri with us today?
He is not online at present.
Okay. All right, thank you. Well, there's test 1. The next item is the zoning bylaw amendment for 287 Lisgar Street. This was postponed from the February 27th meeting that we were supposed to have. I think we had a snowstorm that day. Purpose of this report seeks a zoning amendment to add parking garage as a permitted use within its 16-story residential building on Lisgar Street, east of Bank Street. The 108-unit tower has 4 levels of underground parking, and the zoning bylaw requires at least 43 resident spaces and 8 visitor spaces. The garage has a surplus of 28 spaces, and the applicant wants to operate a commercial parking garage using that surplus. We did receive correspondence on April the 6th from Miss Linda Hode. And she previously had submitted for the February meeting. We also have a submission from Vincent Denime from Claridge Homes. Anyone want to speak to this item?
Chair, I think Councillor McKenney had intended to speak to this, but I don't see her in the virtual room. So can I ask that this item be held?
Sure. We'll hold that item. The next item is the status update, planning committee inquiries and motions for the period ending February 7th, 2020. Okay, the purpose of this report, it's just a routine report. Carried, everybody is carried on this?
Received.
Carried.
Any dissents? No dissents? Okay, this item's carried.
Received, Chair.
Oh, received. Thank you. Next is the 15-minute neighborhoods presentation, which I'm going to move to the front of the agenda, and we'll come back to that. Next is the R4 zoning review phase 2 updates. We'll hold this. There is a presentation. And next is the provincial policy statement. We have a presentation on file on this one. This is Don Herwire is going to be providing us an update on the new 2020 provincial policy statement, which was released by the province in January. So we'll hold that one for Don's presentation as well. Number 7 is the modification to building plan amendment number 136 regarding the minimum building heights in Kannada Town Center. Purpose of this report seeks approval for a modification to official plan OPA 136 to be approved by the local planning appeal tribunal. In September of 2014, council adopted OPA 136, which amended the Kannada Town Center secondary plan to, among other things, require a minimum building height of 3 stories. We're not going to have a presentation on this. I will tell you that correspondence that you should have seen from Martin Raj Manadan, who is, and Ursula Mellons, who is with Soloway Wright. She was speaking in support for Richcraft, and Trevor Hca in his email on a few items yesterday. We heard from him as well. Does anyone want to hold this item? Councillor Sudds, did you want to say a few words? Is this the item that you're here for today, or is it, did you want to speak to it, or are you just happy if we carry it?
Thank you. I'm happy to carry it. I am obviously interested, support the staff recommendation. So I think it's moving in the right direction, and hopeful that the committee will support it.
And on that, is the item carried?
Carried.
Carried.
Carried. No dissents? Okay.
Chair,
Yes.
if I can interrupt, a note for Melody, our committee coordinator. Councillor Hubley is is on hold on this call. He wanted me to let you know, waiting to join.
He's in the waiting room?
He's in. I see him with a phone number. I'll get him in. There we are.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for letting us know. Okay, so Councillor Hubley, we have just carried the minimum building heights in Kannada Town Center item, which is item number 7. Okay, number 8 is the zoning bylaw amendment for 25 Grant Street. Councillor Leeper, you will want to hold this item?
Yes, please.
And then I won't even say anything more until we'll come back to that one, okay? The next one is 840 Pazina Place. This report seeks approval for a zoning amendment to permit 5 townhouse units on the south side of Pazina Place in the Blackstone South community. We've had no correspondence received. We have nobody who requested to speak. Councillor Gower, you approve us carrying this item?
Yes, no issues with this one.
Okay, so is this item, is Mr. Mark on the line?
He is.
Do you need a recorded vote? I'm thinking to myself, you must need a recorded vote for purposes of knowing who's voting for one thing, and whether, the formality. If you don't, that's great, but can you comment on that, please? Or would
Yes,
you
Chair, the committee coordinator, as I understand it, can see who is online and can see that a quorum of the committee is online. And therefore, on that basis, in my opinion, yeas and nays are not. Any councillor, of course, is always able to call for them, but you don't have to have them on every occasion.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, so this item is carried, no dissents, correct? Thank you.
Correct.
Okay, the next item, a zoning bylaw amendment for 1158 Old Second Line Road, has been withdrawn. The next item, item number 11, is the zoning bylaw amendment for 1068 Cummings Avenue. I have no requests to speak. We have received a submission in support from Matthew McElligott from Fotan. Did anyone want to speak to this item? Okay, this is going to be a nice addition to your ward, Councillor Tierney.
It is.
Well, thank you, everybody. So is this item carried at 1068 Cummings Avenue? It is a zoning amendment to permit a 6-story, 316-unit retirement home and seniors complex at the southwest corner of Cummings. And it's replacing a nasty old building.
Carried.
Carried.
Any dissents? No, thank you. The next item is Planning, Infrastructure and Economic Development 2019 year-end report. I hadn't planned for a presentation. Does anyone have any questions? No? So is this item received?
Received.
Received.
Thank you. No dissents, correct? Okay, thank you. The next item is the 2019 annual report pursuant to the Building Code Act 1992. And this is, we have this regularly before us. It presents information on building permit fees collected, as well as the cost of servicing building permits and enforcing the Building Code Act and Ontario Building Code. I've had no requests to speak. Do any of you have any questions? No? Is this item received?
Received.
Received.
Thank you. No dissents. The next item is in Councillor Fleury's ward, 263 Greensway Avenue. Yesterday we received comments from Dennis Jacobs. A council resolution is sought so that the Committee of Adjustment can consider minor variances related to the number of parking spaces at a planned 6-story apartment at 263 Greensway Avenue. Does anyone have any comments on this one? Or any questions? So is this item carried?
Carried.
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 No dissents? So, Melody, I imagine that the only person that's missing now is Councillor Shirelli, right? Everybody else is,
That is correct.
okay, perfect. The next item has Councillor McKenney joined us yet?
She has.
Okay, good, because good thing, Councillor McKenney, because this is your item, your mural. The exemption to the permanent signs on private property bylaw, residential mural at 164 Arthur Street. And you're bringing this forward. Why don't you introduce it if you'd like?
Oh, sure. This is, I mean, it's pretty straightforward. I think that some of my residents are looking to the west into Hintonburg to see what was done on some of the private walls there. Thank you, Councillor Leeper. So this is just to allow for a mural on a private residence on Arthur Street, which is in Chinatown, which has, as you probably well know, has a lot of murals. Chinatown was kind of, I think, the first traditional main street to bring in artists and really color things up that way. So this has gone out to the community. Everybody likes it. I will reiterate, I think, what Councillor Leeper said at one time. I think that maybe a more blanket policy we'll have to start looking at as these things become more and more popular. But certainly there was no issue with it, and I strongly support it. So hopefully we get it through today through council and a little bit of color.
Carried.
Time when we need it. Thank you. I'm coming back for Lisgar Street though. You're not through with me yet. You know
Yeah.
Yeah.
We held it for you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Councillor Leeper?
Just briefly, I don't know if Steve Willis wants to make a comment, but they are making very good progress on a regulatory regime for murals so that we don't have to keep having these come to committee for a vote.
Yeah, and I know that you've been pushing hard for that since you've had the lion's share of the murals. Okay, so so on this item, on Councillor McKenney's mural at 164 Arthur Street, is it carried?
Carried.
Carried.
Thank you. No dissents? Thank you. Okay, then we have a couple of IPDs, information previously distributed. If anyone wants to have either of these before us for discussion today, the approval of 2/3 of those present and voting is required. The first one is the routine report, which is the cash in lieu of parkland. And the other one is a proposed regulatory matters pertaining to Community Benefits Authority. We did receive correspondence as part of Trevor Hca's correspondence yesterday. He also touched on this item, and he was asking about the ability of the public delegations to have input. And yeah. So there's actually 3 of these things. And then the other one is inclusionary zoning. The refresh of a 10-year housing and homelessness plan now being finalized will set affordable housing targets based on household income and demographics. And this was an IPD that we received from Ms. Gray, and determine which tools council can use to leverage new affordable housing. One such tool is certainly inclusionary zoning. So there's more to come on this. And Councillor Sudds is on the line, and Councillor McKenney, you're still there. Either one of you want to? We're not going to discuss it. We'd have to vote 2/3. Anyway, that's
Received.
Received on all 3 of them.
Received.
Okay. All right. And no one wants to lift any of them and vote on it. Okay. Perfect. Thank you for the information, staff. All right. Now we'll go back to the beginning. Get rid of some stuff. The first item is the Tefler Business School. And are we all set up for that, Melody?
Yep. Give me 1 second. When you're ready, I will share my screen.
Okay. So this is a really neat project that was, I think it was championed for sure by our good friend Sheila Perry, the president of FCA, and Roland Dempsey. They met with us quite a few times. And Sheila, you know, being a former principal and just an overall enthusiastic person, worked with the Tefler School. And so, we are going to have Sheila on, and she'll introduce Benjamin Ottenoff. Sheila, are you there?
She is online.
I'm here at the very least. I'm Ben.
Hi, Ben.
Would you like me to put on video? I'm not sure the bandwidth capacities with the meeting this large.
Sorry, Sherry, you're cutting out.
I didn't say anything, so maybe that was Sheila.
Okay.
Okay, Ben, we can hear you. So I'd say
Awesome.
so I think we're going to put the video up.
Okay.
Okay, Ben, we can hear you. So I think we're going to.
Can you hear me now?
Okay. Yes.
That sounded like Sheila there.
Okay.
Yes, Sheila. Sheila.
Should I go ahead?
Yes, please.
Okay. Thank you very much, first of all, for hosting us. And
if everybody else could mute their mics, please. And your YouTube videos if you're playing at the same time.
okay, there's where the problem.
And your YouTube videos if you're playing at the same time.
Okay. So how do I leave this is where the so can you hear me okay? So can you hear me okay? Go back to the library. Oh dear. Seems to be feedback. I'm going to suggest you go ahead maybe with Ben. I will try to give a very brief background. And suggest you go ahead maybe with Ben. I will try to give a very brief background. And suggest you go ahead with Ben. I will try the challenges of the
It only started to do that when Sheila's mic became live, I think.
oh dear.
Sorry, Sheila, but try muting yourself, Sheila.
I will. Technology. Yes, I will.
Okay, so Sheila, it was you. So Ben, can you go ahead?
Yeah, I can talk and do a little bit of an introduction, just to speak on behalf of the Telfer team. Absolutely. So yeah, I'm Ben Ottenhoff. Just speaking on behalf of myself, the FCA and the Telfer School of Management at U Ottawa. Together, we worked with Sheila, the FCA, Jan Harder, and we commissioned a survey to test the existing resources, capabilities, amenities existing in Barrhaven, so we could help inform a template that can be used in Barrhaven to create 15-minute neighborhoods, but also can be used beyond Barrhaven and scaled into other neighborhoods to develop 15-minute neighborhoods there. And we have a quick little video clip set up here by Mark Bowman that shows a little bit of the work we've done, some of the survey results, and then sets us up for the template that we're still working on, and it is forthcoming as of April 26th.
I'm going to try one more. Does this work?
That's better.
Okay, so it's Sheila here. Is that working?
Go ahead.
Thank you. So first of all, thank you very much, Ben. And this has been a first project for us as an FCA, joining with the Telfer group at the University of Ottawa. It's really exciting because this fits with the official plan, as you know, and very much the directions that the city is trying to move towards in the 15-minute neighborhood.
And as an FCA, we're members that are very interested and committed as volunteers in our communities. The whole idea of the Telfer students, these are fourth year MBA students working on their projects of sustainability and leadership. And this gives a very good opportunity, a live opportunity for them to get their feet wet, so to speak. So the exciting part in this is that when we pitched this back in the early part of winter term and talking with Councillor Harder, the selection was Barrhaven, and as you'll see in the video, you're going to see a lot more detail, but this was a student selected area, two of the members being part of that. And as we know, there are many factors as part of a 15-minute neighborhood. They undertook a survey, which you'll see the results of, which I think are very revealing, but very specific to Barrhaven. And of course, Barrhaven being such a growing area and the amenities there. The time that this took was very short, really from January up till most recently. And we've been working on the finalized paper on this virtually. We have met with senior staff. We've met obviously with the BIA has been very important in this. And why do we really want to see this go forward? Well, we're trying to work with the city on this. We see this is extremely important, and that personally, the time that we're seeing right now for people and what folks are going through in their own neighborhoods really brings resolve about how to go things forward with planning. And it is extremely important to have these areas well planned when we look at resources that are needed, what makes a neighborhood friendly, and all the ingredients that draw people. So how do we go forward with this? Well, the template is what we're after. We're looking at increasing the partners, and this is a very much a beginning. The part I love about it is, of course, seeing the students working with us, and we're really, really pleased to be able to share this and look for your comments and questions. Thanks very much, Councillor.
Thanks very much, Sheila. And just so that you know, we are going to be seeing more of this. The next stop, I think, for 15-minute neighborhoods is going to be a rural place, Carp. I think they've decided on. But the FCA is planning on working on this over the next couple of years, tying into this term. And you know, I think that Sheila was very surprised in the interest in a place like Barrhaven in having 15-minute neighborhoods and what that would bring to this community as a large suburban community, which would be reflective of any of the other large suburban communities too, and how important that is. And the executive director of the Barrhaven BIA, who is Andrea Steenmakers, she was extremely interested on a personal level because she lives here, but also from a business perspective on how we can enjoy where we live even more. So Ben, if you're ready, please take it away.
That's me, actually. And if you're ready, I'll start the show.
Everyone, my name is Ben Ottenhoff, and today I'm here to share with you the results of the recently commissioned Barrhaven Life Survey. To begin, I will give a brief outline of some of the 5 W's, all of which I will go into greater detail as I continue on. In terms of the where, the survey was commissioned in Barrhaven, Ontario, which is the fastest growing ward in the fastest growing city in Eastern Ontario. We chose Barrhaven for this reason, in addition to the fact that several of my group members have personal connections within the area. The survey was open from February 28th to March 13th with the hopes of helping create a general template for 15-minute neighborhoods, as well as inform us on how best to implement this template within Barrhaven. The survey was composed of 16 questions and received 1,273 responses. It was targeted predominantly towards decision-making individuals within Barrhaven. Achieved a great deal of success from a survey response perspective. 81% of respondents identified themselves to be between the ages of 25 and 64.
In light of this, we can be quite confident that this survey accurately captures the daily lifestyles and habits exhibited by the adult population within Barrhaven. The purpose of this survey was to ultimately get a better understanding of the existing community feel in Barrhaven. To do so, we asked 16 questions that touched on a range of topics from existing and lacking amenities to any desired governance factors, such as affordability, environmental sustainability, or cultural diversity. At the time of the survey, it was determined that there is not an overwhelmingly strong sense of community within Barrhaven. As validated within our survey, one potential way to foster community within neighborhoods is through the establishment of a downtown civic block. Having this sort of Main Street feel with many amenities and services in one general area lends itself to the importance of not only what is being produced and built in terms of businesses, but also where these things are being produced. This realization is a focal point in my team's recommendation of bringing places to people rather than people to places. Within my team's recommendation to bring people to places, we detail a variety of services and amenities that can help elicit these feelings of community. Additionally, the template also outlines desirable governance factors such as affordability, sustainability, and cultural diversity that are all important to integrate within 15-minute neighborhoods. Ultimately, because each 15-minute neighborhood and geographic area will have different resources and existing services, the template can be used to form a sort of needs analysis between what is existing and what is lacking. Ultimately, the results from the survey are going to be used to create a scalable template for 15-minute neighborhoods that can be used in Barrhaven and beyond. It will be based off of a variety of empirical data from our Barrhaven Life Survey, but is also important to be tailored to each existing neighborhood. And since every neighborhood is different, it is important that this template remains dynamic. It must remain dynamic so that it can keep up with changing lifestyles, preferences, and still be applied into the future of 15-minute neighborhoods. I would now like to take a moment just to reaffirm that this template and this report will be forthcoming as of April 26th, and it can be made available upon request. I would like to thank everyone who is listening for their time, and if anyone has any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ben. And thank you, Mark, for putting Ben's voice and the video together.
Thank you very much to Mark for putting all that together. I wish I could have sounded as spry as I think I sound in person, but what can you do?
Well, anyway, I hope everybody enjoyed looking at it. Anyone have any questions for Ben or Sheila or your thoughts on the 15-minute neighborhoods?
Chair, I do. It's Councillor Dudas.
Yes, Councillor Dudas.
I just wanted to thank Sheila and Ben for doing this. As someone who lives in a 15-minute neighborhood herself in Blackburn Hamlet, I recognize how important it is to be able to walk and get to areas that we all need to be able to access. I noticed in the presentation that it mentioned that in addition to Barrhaven, there is the potential for future neighborhoods to be looked at. In addition to what's your next steps? How's this going to roll out? Because I want.
So we've been doing a little bit of benchmarking the survey within Barrhaven to get a specific idea of what residents in Barrhaven need. So what we're hoping to establish is a general framework and just general idea of what sort of amenities are needed to bring about, desired governance factors of, cultural diversity, affordability, things like that. So essentially, we're just hoping to make a template that with, essentially a needs analysis that can be conducted via survey like one that was commissioned. You can just essentially benchmark existing neighborhoods and compare them to, what is needed to get to 15-minute neighborhoods.
And I noticed in the survey, it said it was between 25 and I'm sorry, I don't remember the end.
64.
64. Did you find that there was a lot of younger people that were involved? Like 25 is a good age group, but did you find that they were engaged?
We had 8% of people were they identified themselves to be under that age limit. So there wasn't an overwhelming number, and about 10% to be over 65. So we didn't intend to target anyone younger than 18, but it sort of happened as a little bit of an auxiliary effect. But yeah, I would say only about 75 individuals under the age of 18 were interviewed. So
that's interesting. No, thank you very much for this work. I mean, it's absolutely phenomenal. I really appreciated seeing that. Thank you.
Yeah, no, you're very welcome. Thank you for your kind words.
Anyone else? Trying to get my gallery back. So I can see your mouth moving, Sheila, but I can't hear you. Can you take yourself off for final words, Sheila?
Yeah, I think you muted maybe, Sheila.
Here we go.
There we go.
Yeah. So first of all, it's been really super working with the students, and we're really proud of the work and quality that they've done. And as a first starter, you know, you're learning on this, and the specifics of each area are really important. So when we look at various parts of the city, this is a big project that we certainly can't handle on our own, but we do see going to various neighborhoods, working closely with councillors, and you can see where we had a champion here, Councillor and Chair Harder, and the BIA is a very important ingredient on this. So for future, it's putting things together. In our vision, we're looking at possibly 3 a year, but once the template's up, we can use that for a very good way of going forward. And the other thing I would really like to emphasize is the fact that the survey is very specific, as you can see, to the area of Barrhaven. And that resulted, as I said earlier, about the partners being in a meeting in advance. So it'll give you a bit of an idea, but it is a big role, and it's an important one that we see going forward, especially with the official plan.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Sheila, and thank you, Ben, and please thank your team.
Yeah,
thank you.
I certainly will. And if anybody would like access to the report, you know, the template that I mentioned will be forthcoming. We expect to have it finished by April 26th. And yeah, as I said, just reach out to Sheila, myself, anybody, and we'll get in contact and we can get that report to you.
Yeah.
And Ben, if you send a copy of it to Melody Duffany, our committee coordinator, she'll share with all members of council.
That
Because,
sounds perfect.
as you heard from Councillor Dudas, I think the others are going to be interested for sure.
Right.
Yep, I certainly will do that as soon as we're done and it's all ready.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. And I really appreciate all of your time, the resources, helping us, you know, get the survey out and everything. Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, you're so
And
welcome.
We're
It's
very
been great.
grateful as well, and want to look forward working further.
Yeah, it's
And
been
not-
fantastic working with everyone.
That's great. And on this, in this unprecedented times and meeting, you're the first presenters that we've had. So it's been great for us to know how to go forward, because May the 11th is going to be really interesting when we have the joint Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee meeting and the Planning Committee on the official. Anyway, take care. Thank you very much.
Take care, everyone. Stay safe.
Thanks,
Wash your
everybody.
hands.
Good luck, Ben.
Bye.
Thanks.
Good luck.
Bye. Good. All
So
right,
Chair,
what
we
did
have a
I-
motion on this.
Okay, can you read it for me, please? Because I think I threw that paper away.
I am going to put it up on the screen for you, actually.
I've got it in front of me too, if you'd like me to read it, Melody.
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay. I'll just read the be it resolved. So therefore be it resolved that Planning Committee receive this presentation, and be it further resolved that the committee coordinator be directed to post a link to the YouTube presentation as accessed on April 9th to the city's website within minutes of this meeting, ensuring the presentation contents meet accessibility requirements if practicable.
Great. So on the motion, is that carried?
Carried.
Carried.
Thank you. Is that all we have to do, Ms. Stephanie?
That's everything. Thank you.
Okay. So now I said when I was speaking that I was going to leave items 1 to 3 to last, right?
Yes.
Let me just find out. But the one item, since we have, Councilor McKinney, are you here? Are you still here?
I am, thanks. I probably won't be long if I can go ahead with item 2.
Well, you know what, I'm going to change the the procedure that I stated at the beginning, if that's okay with everybody. And let's go to the Lisgar item. Because for the benefit of Councillor McKenney, is anyone not support that? So is everyone okay with that? If I hear nothing, I will presume that that's fine to go. And 287 Lisgar. And I'll remind you that this is for the opportunity for this location to operate a parking garage as a permitted use. Go ahead, Councillor McKenney.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks to the members. Our first Zoom Council Committee meeting. Happy to be part of it. So no surprise that I don't support additional parking at this location. Again, it's downtown. There's plenty of surface parking downtown. There's plenty of off-street parking, and to add 28 spots. Well, that may seem like a small amount to quibble over. I want to remind committee members that the same applicant was granted a zoning bylaw amendment just a block over at Gloucester and at Nepean for a 253 space garage. So, this is, death by 1,000 cuts, really, death by 1,000 parking spots, death to, could be to our transit system, but certainly not in line with what we are encouraging in terms of intensification, in terms of our transportation master plan. And, I really do hope that when we revisit our official plan, that this is something we take into account. Just the last comment I'll make is that the ongoing frustration here is that, when we approved a site plan earlier on, it was for a certain amount of residential parking. I understand that the use has changed from condo to rental, but that should not automatically grant that additional parking for visitors, or for public parking rather. Visitor parking is one thing, residential parking is another thing. I understand fully. Actually, I've had conversations with certain members of the public who have planning backgrounds, and I've come to stronger realization actually on the need for some ongoing residential parking, so that we are able to bring more people into the downtown, living in the downtown, but also providing that needed residential parking. But public parking really is there is plenty of it right now, and it does essentially go against everything that we're trying to do right now. So a quick question to staff, do they take into account not just the 28 that we're talking about here, but the aggregate amount of parking that's already available, what that means, and what that means in terms of people choosing maybe not to come in by transit, to come in and park because it's easier, and also what does 28 plus 253, and do they look at the entire amount of public parking in an area before granting, after site plan control, this further bylaw, zoning bylaw amendment?
Is Simon available to make a comment on that, or any of the staff on the question that Councillor McKenney had?
Simon?
Good morning, members of council. Thank you for the question. Councillor, no, we don't look at the aggregate of parking that's being requested. These are individual sites that are being assessed, and they're responding to market demands and changes individually. Each project is unique, and in this case, for example, we only have an aggregate of 28 spaces that may be used for public parking. There's no intent that a parking garage become the principal use, and there's nothing prejudicing this building from providing parking, as you mentioned, for the residential needs of the building, if that's what the market is demanding. Thank you.
Well, again, I go back to the fact that, you know, we don't look at an aggregate. We don't consider that a block over the same applicant under the same circumstances was just, you know, just given permission to rezone for parking garage, a public parking garage. So it is really very problematic. You know, if we get 100 here, 20 there, 253 there, within a short, you know, a narrow radius, it's a problem, and I would encourage the committee members not to support this this application.
All right.
Madam Chair?
Who said that? Councillor Brockington?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I understand there's probably no planning rationale why we would vote against this, but to Councillor McKenney's questions, my questions to staff are, when you look at proximity to LRT and our desire to push public transit and other modes, I mean, she makes a strong case. There's parking elsewhere, there's parking nearby the same applicant. How does staff jive their recommendation with the fact that we're trying to push public transit in the core? I think public would like to hear an answer to that question.
Chair, Mr. James would also like to make a comment when you're ready.
Yes, please, go ahead. I don't know why I keep losing my split screen. Yeah. Hi, Doug, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I just want to state with respect to the policies of the official plan and Councillor Brockington's point with the location of the property being in close proximity to transit downtown. If you look at the policies, I guess, well, of the official plan, it looks at, of course, emphasizing or encouraging people to take transit, but the policies also talk about meeting the needs of the entire citizenry, and it also relates to having parking, or realizing that people will take cars and not everyone will take transit. So it's having the parking that's available for those who choose to do so as well. Sort of a mix to meet the needs of everybody. In the Centertown area as well, it does discourage surface parking lots. This property actually was a surface parking lot beforehand, before a building was put up there. And it does encourage in the Centertown area, if you're going to have parking, to have it underground. This parking is there. And as Mr. Diaco said, it doesn't mean that people will use it. It is the opportunity to use it. But with respect to the policies of the official plan, it meets the needs of everybody while still encouraging transit. As I said, we still have the ability to provide parking for those who choose alternatives.
Thank you, Doug.
Thank you.
Anyone else have anything on this?
Chair, Councillor Gower.
Yes, Vice Chair Gower.
I guess a comment and a comment in general. I think it's worth remembering this parking garage is already built, and actually maybe staff could answer. If we don't approve this today, would we just end up with parking spaces in this garage that can't be used, or like, I think what's happening is they could still be used, but only by residents themselves. Is that right?
Through the chair, correct, Councillor Gower. It would be limited to the residents and visitors.
Okay, so I'm going to be supporting the staff report, but it's kind of an interesting question. This keeps coming up on the question of, does reducing parking make more people use transit? I'm of the mind that better transit makes people use transit, not necessarily limiting the number of parking spaces in these buildings. But this is going to keep coming up because I think as we go 5 years, 10 years, 20 years and improve transit in our city, we have a lot of underground parking garages that are attached to homes and residences and businesses, where we're going to see less and less of a need for parking as it was originally intended or originally zoned. And it's going to be interesting as we go on, how we can make decisions as a city. If there's less residents who need a parking garage in their immediate building, what happens to those parking spots then? What's the best use for them going forward? Do they become public spaces or can they be reused? So it's something that's going to come up a lot again. And I hope staff are considering that maybe through the official plan or other policies as we go forward.
Chair, Mr. Migalis would like to make a comment.
Go ahead, Alain.
Alain, we seem to not have audio for you. No.
Okay, is this better?
That's better,
Yep.
thank you.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. So speaking for the official plan and policy end of things. Okay, is this better?
That's better, thank you.
I just wanted to point out.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So speaking for the official plan and
I just wanted to point out that as Mr. James and Mr. Diaco indicated, the site of this building was formerly a surface parking lot. And in the place of that parking lot are now several dozen, maybe even a couple of hundred of residential units. But I think it's indicative also of something that's happening in the market, which is that residential units within downtown buildings are actually experiencing the reality that the people who go and live there may not own cars. And the only reason why we are considering this application today is because the number of parking spaces that was originally provided in those buildings ended up not being absorbed by the market of people residing in those buildings. So I think it's something that we take into account, and to Councillor McKenney's point, as we look at the future direction given the official plan, there is something to be noted about this shift that is actually happening and the flexibility that we need to have when we make regulations with respect to parking requirements, for instance, in the zoning bylaw. In the meantime, I think it's noteworthy that 28 parking spaces that will be available for commuters is a reduction from the total that existed on that lot previously. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those comments. Anyone else have anything to say on this item? Councillor Leeper?
Nope.
You unmuted yourself. That's why I thought maybe you did. I don't see a little mic there. Anyway, on this item, is it carried?
I'm going to dissent, Chair.
I was just going to ask, are there any dissents? We have a dissent from Councillor Leeper. Thank you very much. Thanks, Councillor McKenney. And actually, later on, we'll have a notice of motion from Vice Chair Gower about parking and how it's changing. So we'll get to that later.
Thank
Pardon?
you. Maybe I'll join back.
Yeah, well, it's only a notice of motion. So it'll be before us on May 14th.
Yeah, I'm going to come back for the R4 anyway, so I'll see ya.
Well, don't go far because that's now.
Is that next? I'm listening. I'm listening.
Okay, and so I'll just introduce that the R4 zoning review phase 2 update is just that, it's an update. Vice Chair Gower has a combined motion for items 5 and 6 that Planning Committee suspend the rules to receive the update, as verbal updates from staff are only permitted in unforeseen circumstances, and to dispense with the requirement of the procedure bylaw for a written report by staff about the update after the meeting. There's that motion before us.
Yeah, I can read there's a bit of a preamble, but I'll read therefore be it resolved. Therefore be it resolved that Planning Committee suspend the rules of procedure to receive the aforementioned verbal updates from staff, and therefore be it further resolved that Planning Committee suspend the rules of procedure to dispense with the bylaw requirement that staff provide a written report to be posted to the city's website with the minutes contents for this meeting.
Thank you. On the motion, is it carried?
Carried.
Carried.
Thank you. No dissents? Thank you. Okay, so Tim Moorman and John Herwire and Steve Willis are our presenters. Go ahead, please. Tim, you muted yourself.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Thank you, Councillor. Just going to shut off the YouTube, which lags a little bit. Okay. So I'm sorry, I missed the preamble here. Do we have the presentation on screen?
We do now.
Excellent. There we go. Okay. So thanks very much, Madam Chair and members of the Planning Committee. So the R4 residential zone is intended as the most intensive of our low-rise residential zones in the city of Ottawa. It's the one where you're supposed to be able to build, among other things, what we call low-rise apartment buildings, or sometimes called walk-up apartment buildings, in the sense that they don't inherently need an elevator the way a high-rise condo tower might need. So in practice, the R4 zone is supposed to allow these types of apartment buildings. In principle, it's supported by the official plan. In practice, the way the rules are actually written, too often they actually, in most cases, actually prevent you from building this kind of apartment building. There's a lot of reasons why the different. We can actually go to the next slide, please. There are a lot of reasons why the current zoning doesn't work, but if I had to summarize them, it is that they generally impose a set of kind of suburban or greenfield or cheap land kind of assumptions on development that happens as infill on tight sites, on small lots in the inner urban area. So that's generally the problem with them. It's been a major contributor to our rental housing shortage that is ongoing. So the purpose of this project is to basically debug the R4 zone standards to enable the kinds of compatible and cost-effective and context-sensitive apartment buildings that the zone is actually supposed to allow, and that the official plan actually directs is supposed to be able to happen. Can I have the next slide, please? So council recently declared a housing emergency, and clearly with good reason. In a healthy rental market, you have a vacancy rate of about 3%. At 3%, tenants can find places to live, landlords can find tenants, and everyone is more or less happy. It has been a long time since Ottawa has had a rental vacancy rate of 3%. And in most of the inner urban neighborhoods, it has been below that for a decade, if not longer. Next slide, please. So just to put some numbers to this, between 2001 and 2016, so over 15 years, we added almost 10,000 new tenant households to the city of Ottawa. Over the same time, we built about 6,300 new purpose-built rental units. That shortfall of 3,000 rental units is equivalent to about 2.5% of the entire rental stock of the city of Ottawa. Recall I said a moment ago that a healthy vacancy rate is about 3%. So you can imagine what a 2.5% shortfall is doing to our rental market, and the pressure that it puts on rents and on vacancy rates, on the ongoing consequences for rental households. Next slide, please. So we need more apartments, and we need quite a lot more apartments. Apartments are actually quite good for smaller households, and not only for smaller households, but certainly for 1- and 2-person households, they are very well suited. Over half of Ottawa's households are actually single people or couples without children. So they're basically kind of 1-bedroom households. Somewhat more would need 2 bedrooms. It's actually only about a quarter of households in Ottawa that need the larger units, but the vast majority of Ottawa's housing stock is, in fact, in the form of larger units, in the form of single and detached and townhouse units that are actually more housing than what a small household necessarily needs, and increasingly more than they can afford, because the cost of all housing has gotten more and more expensive. So there really is a lack of apartments that is contributing to this problem. So next slide, please. So the proposed changes to the R4 zones, we will be applying these through this project to the inner urban R4 zones. That is essentially wards 12 through 17. It's not all of ward 16. The southern half is excluded, but basically wards 12 to 17. The changes apply only to the existing R4 zones that exist within that area. If you look at the map on the screen here, that is those areas in black. If land is not in one of these black areas, these amendments do not affect them. Next slide, please.
Sorry, bear with me. It seems to be stuck here.
Here we go. So in the summary of what we're proposing to do with the R4 zones is very generally to, again, within the existing R4 zones in the inner urban, to generally allow 8 or 12 units on lots where currently you are, because of the minimum lot size or because of the details of the zone, you are restricted to 3 or 4 units. So allow 8 to 12 instead of 3 or 4. This slide here is a little bit misleading. Allow 12 units on 15-meter plus wide lots. I should note that in some of the R4 zones, when you've got a lot that size to begin with, a 15-meter or about 50-foot lot, you are already allowed to do a low-rise apartment with no explicit limit on the number of units. So this is all about adding the possibility of doing these apartments in places within the R4 zone that you're not currently allowed to because of lot size and unit count limits and other things. We would build in green space requirements that are tailored to apartments and to an urban context, making sure that there is quality green space that serves a purpose, room for trees, things of that nature, rather than space for the sake of space, which is kind of a principle behind the existing going back decades. But we want to make sure that we leave space for garbage management. That is paramount. We want to make sure that the garbage produced by an apartment building can be dealt with responsibly. Bringing it back and forth between storage areas to the front and storing it in the meantime. We want to ensure that, because on a small lot, fitting parking is a real challenge, and certainly it creates a problem on a small lot with the various demands an apartment building has under the building code and in terms of things like accessibility. So we will not permit parking to displace things like green space, and in fact, the rules would prohibit parking for apartment buildings on lots under 15 meters wide. This, of course, is the part of town where we don't currently require parking in the first place. This is the next logical step with respect to apartments. We're going to build in some basic design standards, things like balconies, facade articulation, things so that even a building that is minimally zoning compliant, before it's even gone through site plan control, it has incorporated some elements that make it friendlier to the street, something that is not, and we've seen some examples around town that have got people's backs up, buildings, not buildings that are sort of anonymous and otherwise don't interact well with the street. We are not proposing changes to the permitted heights. And there are minimal changes proposed to required yards. This is just essentially how the yard requirements are written. They are not material changes. So essentially, the permitted massings currently in the R4 zone, we continue to allow them. It's just about what you're allowed to do in terms of cutting up the inside of that building. Okay, next slide, please. So the standards that we've come up with were tested through an extensive process. We hired several consultants, architects, development finance people. Here is an example of one of the sort of proof of concept buildings that that they came up with. We said, figure out how you would do it, an 8-unit building on a 12-meter lot. This is one of the ways you can do it. And as you can see, there is space to store bicycles. There is space to store garbage responsibly, to move it front to back. There is room for trees. There is an interaction with the street. There were several ways to skin the proverbial cat in all this. So we did this exercise of making sure that, yes, in fact, you could do it workably several different ways. Next slide, please. We also had the architect do a few model interiors of some of these buildings. In this instance, this 8-unit building on 12 meters, you get some reasonably comfortable 2-bedroom apartments. Again, we did this for several of the models just as a proof of concept. Next slide, please. And as I mentioned before, we would be building in some standards into the zoning. On the left, you see a box that is actually fairly familiar in some places around town. This is what you're currently allowed to do in terms of building massing and facade before you go to site plan control. There's a lot of sort of issues with it, and it has drawn the ire of the neighbors. What we would be doing in the R4 zoning would be to actually build in things like part of the front of the facade, part of the front facade has to be stepped back a little bit further. It has to have balconies on the front so it addresses the street. It has to have an entrance on the front of the building facing the street, which you're currently not actually always required to do by zoning. Things like fenestration ratios and allowing things like bay windows to provide some articulation. And things to prevent the front yard from being turned unlawfully into parking once our backs are turned. So building those standards into the zoning so we don't have to rely on site plan control for as much of the compatibility as we might currently. Next slide, please. So the proposed zoning requirements are out on circulation now. The project website, I'm sorry, it's not on the screen, ottawa.ca/R4 zoning, all one word. We are soliciting comments on the circulation by May 8th. We are expecting to bring the report to Planning Committee in June. Madam Chair, I want to emphasize, just in closing, that zoning alone can't make housing affordable, okay? But it can definitely make housing a lot more expensive than it needs to be. And in its current form, the way it is currently written, that is what the R4 zoning does by preventing the creation of the housing supply that it is intended to actually allow. 1 out of every 3 households in Ottawa rents their dwelling. That's about 130,000 individuals, couples, families who, to a greater or lesser extent, best case scenario, they live with a certain amount of anxiety of what will happen to them if they ever have to move. And that's to say nothing of the hundreds of young people, downsizing seniors, newcomers to the city every year who don't even get to that point because they can't even find a place to live. This amendment is going to be just one piece of the puzzle, but when we bring it, it is going to represent our best professional advice on how to amend the R4 zoning so it stops being part of the problem and starts to contribute to a solution to the ongoing housing emergency that we're facing. Thanks very much.
Hello. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Tim. Okay, that was a really good report.
Steve Willis, can you hear me? Chair, it's Steve Willis. Can you hear me?
Yes. Oh, did you want to say something, Mr. Willis? Go ahead.
Yes, I just wanted to clarify Mr. Mormon's final slide that we have tentatively targeted June to bring this matter forward. Because of the public interest, that date will be reviewed closer to the time, and it may be the fall before we can bring this report forward if there's a high degree of public interest and we want to entertain public allegations. So I just want to put it in the context of the unknown of our current situation.
Thank you. Okay, so I see Vice Chair Gower and I see Councillor Leeper who have
as well,
questions.
Chair.
Pardon?
It's Matt here. I'd like to.
Okay, so this is the way I have it so far. Let's just get this down first because that'll make it a bit easier. Vice Chair Gower.
Actually,
Councillor Leeper, Councillor Fleury, and McKenney.
And Hubley.
And Hubley. Okay. All right, well, let's start with that anyways. Vice Chair Gower.
Chair, my hand was up on behalf of Councillor Hubley, who's not on video, so I will pass, but I just wanted to let you know Councillor Hubley wanted to speak, but he's weighed in, so you have him on your list. Thanks.
So he's first then. You just got bumped up to first, Alan. Are you guys in the same room?
No, I'm broadcasting from home. Chair, I just have one question to the presentation. I just want to get a little more info on. Tim, you mentioned that there'll be no parking requirement for the smaller buildings that could have up to 12 units in it. Where do you suggest that these people are going to park if there's no parking on their actual property?
Madam Chair, can you hear me all right?
I can
hear you.
Okay, so first of all, in the area that we are talking about, that the inner urban area that we showed you on the map before, there is already not a parking requirement for up to 12 units. So that's actually existing zoning. What we were talking about is actually a prohibition on parking on the smaller lots. To the question of where people will park, the best data that we have actually indicates that apartment dwellers are much less likely to have vehicles. In fact, The best interpretation I can give of the data of apartment dwellers owning vehicles is that they own exactly as many vehicles as we have required in building to provide parking. So we're seeing already a lot of people who want to move specifically into downtown and around downtown, specifically so that they don't have to have a vehicle. One of the things about the zoning actually that's prevented the supply of parking for a long, long time was it actually imposed unrealistic parking requirements on buildings. So, but briefly to Councillor Hubley's question, we have not required parking for 4 years since we passed the review of minimum parking for the inner urban area 4 years ago.
It's only for the inner urban area, because that wouldn't work in the burbs or if they intend to build something like this in the rural environment. So you're only talking about the inner urban.
Madam Chair, Councillor Hubley is absolutely correct. This is only the inner urban R4s.
Thank you very much for your answer. That's all I have, Chair. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Councillor Hubley. Councillor Leeper?
Thanks, Chair. I don't really have a lot of questions. I do want to say thanks to Mr. Willis for actively engaging with some of us who are probably going to be the most affected by the R4 review. I'm going to have more to say on the R4 review when we take a look at the Grant Street application. But I did want to say from my perspective, Hintonburg and Mechanicsville are what we call junior R4s. For the most part, the number of units in each in this area is limited to 4. The direction of the R4 zoning review would bring us to allow 8. So we're looking at a doubling of the allowed density in much of Hintonburg and Mechanicsville, which is a big giant chunk of the near west end of Ottawa. Some of the things that we have been talking to Mr. Willis and his team about, there is a strong concern that if we allow double the density in Hintonburg and Mechanicsville, which has become obviously with a couple of LRT stations, wonderful Main Street, all the infrastructure that makes us such a great place to live, that we're actually going to see an acceleration in the gentrification that is happening right now in the ward. It becomes more economical to take down some of the old converted houses, some of the older triplexes, etc., and build 8 units. Each one of those 8 units is going to be relatively expensive in this area, and we're concerned about the loss of affordable housing. And something I expect that we'll hear from Councillor McKenney as well, and maybe I'll let her address it at greater length. Plant Bath, Dover Court, our recreational facilities are really at capacity. Doubling the
Councillor Leeper, did you just press your ear?
built form, but it's intimately tied to how we're going to ensure that our city's core is a livable space. So I will just leave it there. These are issues with which Mr. Willis and his team are actively engaged. There is significant understanding on the part of a large chunk of Hintonburg and Mechanicsville that greater density is how we're going to achieve our environmental sustainability goals and our affordable housing goals. But we are concerned that we're moving ahead with this at the risk of actually accelerating the gentrification, which is resulting in the loss of neighbors who would otherwise be able to take advantage of living in our neighborhood.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We lost you for about 30 seconds or something. I don't know what happened there, but appreciate your comments. Councillor Fleury?
Madam Chair, yes, I too wanted to extend my appreciation to the team, and specifically Mr. Willis to meet with us and discuss the particular concerns that we have for our communities. Want to raise the following, and Jeff initiated and really spoke the specifics, but you have to consider that the R4 zoning has currently already driven a lot of new density in core neighborhoods. And when you look at the recreation facilities, the newest one we have in the Greenbelt is Plant. And Plant was done as a last measure before amalgamation. So that's certainly top of mind for all of us in the Corps to see as part of the DC review and as part of these efforts. How can we make our neighborhoods more livable? And you know, certainly Steve Willis and Dan Chenier are quite aware of those issues, and will continue to pressure that. I have to say that the philosophy of removing some of the unit caps is good. In some ways, it's doing so because it's saying, hey, we want to make sure that units are more affordable, yet we're not using good tools to ensure that we force a diversity of units. And I think sometimes what we do is we miss the goal, and I'll give you the Sandy Hill specific example, but it relates to a lot of these neighborhoods, which is, if currently you're allowed to build a 4-unit in an environment, 4 units, you're allowed a maximum of 4 bedrooms. That in that envelope of that building allows for 16 bedrooms. In the nature of what we're trying to do, because we're capped at 4 bedrooms in a unit, if we don't put a cap on the number of units, then we find ourselves with bachelors and 1 bedrooms, which do not accommodate couples, do not accommodate young families, do not accommodate a variety of affordable demographics that we want to ensure are protected. So I guess my question to Tim relates to, I want to understand the philosophy. You talked about, you know, this effort not being a tool for affordability, but a tool for ensuring that it is not affordable. And I want to understand the depth of that, because in the white papers that I've seen so far, you talked about measures to increase affordability, yet the per square foot of rental and the per square foot cost in a building has not shifted in my mind. And I want to understand what's the city's thought around affordability a little more clear.
Madam Chair, briefly, the single greatest contributor to housing unaffordability, and this speaks to Councillor Leaper's concern to an extent as well, the single greatest challenge to rental affordability that we have now is the scarcity of units. We are seeing when a unit becomes vacant, the rent goes up by on the order of 15%. So it is the scarcity of units that is driving up the rent. It's not just new units. New housing is expensive to build under the best of circumstances. And under the current zoning, we actually force housing to be in inherently expensive forms. The proposed R4 is to allow it to be at things that are better scaled to the needs of the users and that reduce the unnecessary expense. But the core problem is a shortage of units citywide, and particularly throughout the inner urban area. When Councillor Fleury was discussing the 4-unit, 4-bedroom buildings, given the land economics of the inner city, those units end up having to rent. So we're talking about the large 4-bedroom units. They end up having to rent for, I would say, no less than $3,500 a month, which is not really affordable to anybody. We have to keep in mind, Madam Chair, that a lot of the rules in the zoning right now that restrict the number of units, that restrict the density, they predate light rail. They predate the recognition province-wide of the need to intensify. And they predate a time when the rise in housing prices has led to a development site, a lot costing $500,000 for a teardown. You can't add several $100,000s to the general price of land and expect that zoning that worked when it was a lot cheaper to have the same effects. And in fact, the bunkhouse problem that we saw for several years until we put the kibosh to it a couple of years ago was actually a direct result of how do you make 4 units work on a piece of land that costs you $500,000? Well, the way you do it, it's not what the city wanted you to do, but the way you do it is you build it so that it's a bunch of rent-paying roommates, and you make your money that way. You get your $3,500, $4,000 a month that way. So this is really illustrative of how a cap on the number of units has the backfiring effect of actually preventing anyone from building a unit that would be affordable to a family or a household, and essentially forces the market to provide only things that are very big that you can live with. Either you're extremely wealthy to be able to afford it, or you have to pair up with a bunch of roommates, and it doesn't do anything for the singles and couples and even the very small families that make up, between half and 3/4 of the city of Ottawa. Just a quick follow-up on that. Tim, were you done? I apologize. I'm done, Councillor. I saw your lips moving, but I couldn't hear you. That was my. So I guess I don't debate the philosophy. The idea here is, hey, allow for rejuvenation of some of our properties, allow for more people to build in them, to live in them, and but I think the challenge is the following. If we don't have an understanding of forcing diversity of units, we don't allow different demographics to live in the core. And when I look at the actual pricing, I agree with you that we have too low vacancy rates across the board. But the question is, how do we trigger a massive amounts of new units built? And we believe that by building an amount that is, astonishing, that in itself will restabilize the market, which again, I agree philosophically. But what I worry is that the cash cow is on those bachelor and one bedrooms, because you can, by not putting a cap on the number of units, you just do those. And until there's no more demand, then you move to the second product, which will be a 2-bedroom. So to me, I would, you don't have to answer today, but I would say that it's important for the city as part of these efforts to not just, hey, we need more affordability and therefore we need more capacity. That is okay, I agree with point 1, I agree with point 2, but point 3 is also relevant. How do we force diversity of units built through this process so that we don't just fix the bachelor, the ones, that we get into the ones and the 2s and 3s in this environment. So for me, that's where I think that if we're able to use different tools to enable that and favor, maybe we put a cap on units, but if you hit diversity threshold, then we remove some of the cap layers. So then those buildings are diversified as you go along and you have different demographics, different affordability ranges within those buildings. Anyways, food for thought. I know you and I will continue to have discussions. We're meeting with Vanny in a couple of days and I'm looking forward to that.
Chair, we have Mr. Willis would like to make a comment, and we also have some other councillors on the line.
Well, Councillor McKenney is next in line to speak, but go ahead, Mr. Willis.
Here, I'll be very brief. Just wanted to assure the councillor that his point is understood, and it is one of the things we're trying to look at as we finalize the proposals. And we have some ideas that we are exploring to find out whether we have legal means to look at unit diversity. That's all I'll say, Chair. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor McKenney?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Chair. I'm not going to repeat much of what was already said. We've had these conversations. This is changes that will affect the R4 in the urban core. So we've had these conversations. We've had them with staff, and they've been good conversations. But I just want to, remind my colleagues that when we're talking about these types of changes, and again, on principle, I am wholly supportive. We need much more housing stock in the urban core so that people are accommodated when they need it, when they have to move, when they move in, when they decide to sell and become renters, maybe a little later in their lives. But I will remind you that while we were going along in this conversation, and residents were for the most part in support, and people that I was speaking to were in support. As soon as we started talking about asset rationalization, as soon as we started talking about removing arenas, for example, in the downtown core, that changed. And there was an immediate, I wouldn't say backlash, but an immediate questioning of, hold on, you're asking us to do two things. You're asking us to intensify, which we need to do, bring in more people into our neighborhoods, which we absolutely want to do. But at the same time, you're telling us to remove some of our amenities. So some of our rinks, and we can argue whether they're, worth keeping, or are we going to rebuild them at some point? But the point was that there was no plan for rebuilding. So we backed off on that, but it does really speak to the need to tie this to a few things. One is active transportation. If we're going to ask people to come live downtown, they, as Mr. Mormon suggested, and I see it all the time, people who rent are, well, we just passed a report recommendation because earlier in this meeting, because people who rent tend not to use a vehicle. However, we also have to ensure that we're providing that active transportation for them, so that when we do rebuild streets, when we do we are providing cycling routes, and we are providing wide sidewalks and everything else that is needed. So it has to be attached to that. It also, and to Councillor Fleury's point, we have to ensure that there's a diversity of units, so that families can also live downtown. It's critically important to have families also living everywhere in the city, and including downtown. So we have to also attach this to our inclusionary zoning conversations, because what we don't necessarily need is a tremendous amount of high-end rentals in the downtown. Between 2010, 2016, for every new affordable unit we built as a city, we lost 7. So just think about that. We built one, we lost 7, in that kind of $750 range. So we're not even able to keep up with our investments. So this also has to be tied to inclusionary zoning, and it also has to be tied to our discussions around the urban boundary. We want people to live in a way. We have a new climate action plan. We want people to live in a way that is sustainable. The 15-minute neighborhood discussion we just had around Barrhaven was very interesting. I look forward to hearing more along those lines. But we also want to make sure that we're addressing sustainability, and as we're telling residents in one part of the city, you have to intensify, and rightfully so. We have to have that broader conversation about what that means for the entire city. And I will leave it at that. Thank you, Mr. Mormon, Tim. And it was, I look forward to the conversations. I actually quite enjoy these conversations. They're tough. They're tough to have with residents sometimes. They're tough to have with each other, but they do affect one part of the city that needs affordability, needs housing stock, but also needs the amenities and what all that means along with it, for people to be able to live well, live in a 15-minute neighborhood, 5-minute even. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Now, Melody, if you could send me, text me as opposed to email me,
sure,
that would be helpful. Because Councillor Moffat wants to speak, but did you tell me Councillor Brockington wanted to speak?
Yes, I have Councillor Kavanagh and Councillor Brockington.
So we are doing the councillors on the committee first. So it will be Brockington, Moffat, Kavanagh. Anyone else? Okay, Councillor Brockington?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to staff for the report. Very good. Certainly had some discussions before today, and appreciate how this is evolving. Just a question that I'd like to know is, how will the city consider, whether it's part of the official plan or other additional areas not already zoned R4, but moving towards additional R4 designations? Is that being considered?
Madam Chair, to Councillor Brockington's question, this study is just about rewriting and debugging the zoning for the existing R4, so we are not changing the boundaries. That was a conscious decision to be able to focus that on getting the R4 house in order before we talked about proposing extending R4 or some successor zone elsewhere. Following the official plan, following when we go to write the new comprehensive zoning bylaw shortly after adoption of the official plan, we will be looking at where geographically we should be extending the ability to do low-rise apartments and what have you. The boundaries that we have now are essentially the boundaries that were established decades ago. So, so that is something that is long overdue to be looked at, but it won't be happening as part of this project. It'll be happening subsequent to the adoption of the official plan.
Okay, excellent. No, I was aware of what the scope was of your project, but there's some curiosity out there about how this might evolve in the future about adding more R4. Just to go back, Councillor Hubley made a point about parking, and I just want to say, and Tim, you know Carlington pretty well, that some of the discussions we've had in the community about low-rise apartments, even though they appear to be good fits and there's been some lukewarm support in the community for some of the intensification, one of the big issues that does come up is about the lack of proposed parking. And I do agree with you that apartment dwellers statistically use public transit more. There's a lesser reliance on parking, but there's this pretty strong reaction that if there's insufficient parking, that our streets become public parking lots, and people don't want that. It causes conflict when, if we can embed even minimal parking, because we're talking about some buildings where no parking at all is being factored into that. I just want you to know out there that if we can get the public to accept intensification, that's a great step forward. But some of the hiccups have been parking, and we don't want one-for-one parking. We don't want a large ratio, but sometimes even providing a minimum can help smooth over those types of applications. So I think you're aware of that, but some of the recent discussions we've had, again, particularly in Carlington, some of the main pushback has been lack of parking. And the other point I just want to piggyback on, if I can, Madam Chair, is to the point about the facilities in the downtown core. In Carlington, we're seeing with the Westgate expansion, 6 towers, the Travelodge expansion right across the street on Carlington, on Carling, 5 towers, right next door, Embassy West going to 2 towers. We're going to have a total of 13 towers on 2 blocks in Carlington, probably within the next 10 years, 5,000 people. And so that does put strains on the existing infrastructure. The Alexander Community Center is 53 years old, going through a needs assessment now. But those are the types of things we need to be aware of. This is a community that supports intensification, similar to other comments that my colleagues have made. And we can't forget that with intensification puts pressures on existing infrastructure, in this case, recreation that we have. So look, I'm very supportive of where we're going with this R4, your review that you're leading, and will very likely support the end result, but I just want to reinforce some of the issues that we've been seeing thus far. So that was the only comment I wanted to make, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brockington. Councillor Moffat, but before we go to Councillor Moffat, then Councillor Kavanagh, but before we go there, I just wanted to comment that on the issue of arenas. I know it's a conversation I've had with Mr. Miglis, and I know that maybe Scott, you're going to speak to this, and that is what you're going to speak to?
Yes.
So go ahead and speak.
Yeah, I just want to touch on that. This conversation might be more suited for the May 11th joint meeting, given that that's going to be about intensification, the need for the proliferation of the R4 zone throughout the city, and just that discussion that started around urban arenas. And I think it kind of got off on the wrong note, in that there was this thought that we just close the arenas and that would be it. That isn't what the discussion is to be about. It's repurposing. The reality is the standalone rinks, and we're going to face this throughout the city with standalone rinks in the next 10, 20, 30 years as they become, as they get close to their end of the life cycle. as we need to replace the ice plant. We did the ice plant and the slab at the Richmond Arena not that long ago, and it's upwards of $1 million just for that one, just to keep that building running. So I think what the idea is in some of these older facilities is repurposing them. Can we convert them to basketball courts? Can they be, more indoor facilities, indoor skate parks? We see there's one up in the city center building. So things like that. It's the only one in the city. So those opportunities, different types of recreation opportunities as opposed to just hockey rinks. And then can we look at replacing those? So it's not just, deleting those from the community and moving on, but can we actually look at where there are 3 or 4 standalone rinks and actually build a multiplex pad somewhere else? So those are long-term thinking, but that all has to play into further intensification. And as we go forward with our official plan and what that's going to mean, all the councillors are aware of what intensification is going to mean for their communities. And as everyone has indicated, it's a tough decision. It's a tough conversation to have with your residents, because quite often, the R4 zone, these types of things are not popular steps to take, but they're necessary steps to take because the alternative is, more sprawl. So as we go down that path, it's important that we make sure we have these proper conversations, that we're not believing that we're just going to leave people high and dry with no recreation opportunities. That's not at all the intent of that. I actually was discussing this with Dan Chenier in the last 24 hours about urban rinks and the opportunities there. And I expect, obviously, legislative agenda is changing right now due to the current situation, but I expect that we'll have that conversation in the fall when it comes to these facilities and how we're going to move forward with them. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Moffat. Councillor is Councillor Kavanaugh the last councillor that wishes to speak?
Last one on my list, Chair.
Oh, Councillor Leeper wants to? Okay, so I am going to let Councillor Kavanaugh go first. So if anyone else, please let Ms. Stephanie know right now. The other thing is, before we go back to Mr. Mormon for at the end for closing comments, Mr. Willis wants to speak. So go ahead, Councillor Kavanaugh.
Thank you very much, Jan, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. I know this isn't directly affecting Bay Ward immediately, but I've talked with Tim and about the possibilities for the future, and it's something very interesting in terms of how we resolve the problem of intensification. And that's going to come up along the way with stage 2 LRT. So it's not far off. It's going to come soon, and we have to look at it seriously. I actually lived in a zone 4 building with a baby. So I know what they're like in terms of just trying to get by as a family. And I'm hoping that we're going to have very family friendly ones, because I think that's the goal, is reaching out to families. Families are the ones that are suffering the most in terms of the affordable housing crisis. You've got people that you may have 2 people in the household earning money, but then you've got these little ones that don't earn much, and they're actually kind of a burden, and that makes things hard to afford. And that's why we need that affordable housing. So I support what Councillor Fleury was talking about in terms of making sure that the units are not too small. I lived in a 3-bedroom at the time, by the way, with 1.5 bathrooms. That's what happened back probably built in the 70s. So those are the kinds of things that we have to look at, and what Councillor Brockington was talking about with parking. Yes, we're trying to reduce parking, but it's kind of a reality check sometimes with families, unfortunately. And as much as we can reduce parking, it may be something that puts people off, and they avoid going to those units. Anyway, I look forward to further conversations on this, because I know it's going to grow. And but I think design is really crucial, that especially as we think of this COVID-19 situation, and if we have people with children inside these units, and if they have no yard or whatever, they're suffering like everyone else. So think in terms of kids inside a unit for a long period of time, and that's the kind of units we want to see built. And I get the points that Tim was making about the affordability, building these now versus building them 40 years ago, but we have to try. So if you have any comments on that, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kavanagh. And I was just, you reminded me of Kingston Avenue near Merrillville Road, that area in Councillor Brockington's ward. And then the units that Minto used to own along Baseline Road. And if you think about, they were on a much larger footprint than what we're using today, but they served that same kind of purpose, and they were large enough that families could live in.
Yeah, that's where I lived.
And which one, on Kingston or Baseline?
Near on Eleanor Drive on near Baseline and Maryville. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, so it's like kind of like a Back to the Future kind of thing, but on a much smaller.
With giant parking garages at the time, but I don't think that's possible in the future.
No, I forget what they had. They didn't have parking garages on Kingston Avenue. You know, the ones at the top of the street there, they just had parking. I can remember one of my sisters living there in, I guess it would be the 70s. 1975, and having a little kids pool out in the backyard. You know, everybody shared the same space on that, but at least there was space. And that was important. So, you know, in your role as a person who is the
liaison,
right, on gender specific issues, this is something, you know, based on your comments that you were just making, I think that you should have a one-on-one with the sponsor group on the official plan and the
absolutely
R4.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. Councillor Leeper?
Thanks. I did just want to add on to what Tim was saying with respect to more intensification. Councillor Moffat brought it up as well. One of the particular sensitivities we have with the R4 review is that it's occurring in advance of a bigger picture of how intensification is going to look across the city. If we're going to achieve environmental goals, if we're going to achieve housing affordability goals, taxpayer affordability goals, we have to intensify. We know it's going to be right across the city. But right now, what the residents of the R4 zones are looking at is that we're looking at significant increases in intensification in line with, you know, the 5 big moves of our official plan. But they don't understand how that's going to fit into the overall official plan intensification goals. And it's a sensitivity that we have right now that if it were me, I would be looking at doing the R4 as part of the broader official plan rather than as a one-off. Because right now, those residents of the R4s, who traditionally are the more vulnerable communities, immediately banding the central business district, you know, they're looking at and asking me why their neighborhoods, which are already very dense, are being looked at for intensity when we're not looking at the R2s, the R3s, and the R1s. So as we proceed through the R4 review, I do think that at every step of the way, staff need to make it clear that intensification is coming in every zone. Because that's not immediately clear to the residents of the current R4 zones. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much. Thanks very much, Councillor Leeper. And so no one else has anything that they want to say or questions? So I'm going to go to Mr. Willis. Mr. Willis?
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to just do a quick wrap up on several of the comments we heard. This is a useful discussion. The purpose of this report today was to brief Planning Committee when we have the proposals for R4 on the street, so you're aware of it. What we're going to do in the next couple of months is refine those proposals based on the input and come back to committee and council ultimately for approval. Councillor Leeper raised a question about timing, and you may recall the history that this entire R4 initiative started with our efforts on the bunkhouses and follow the interim control bylaw and the like. And so we've been on a procession of different zoning improvements for this, and that's sort of a function of the timeline. But once our staff report on the official plan growth management strategy comes out shortly, you will see how this fits with the broader framework of how intensification is contemplated in the rest of the city. On the second point that Councillor Fleury and Councillor Kavanagh raised about unit typology, we are looking at what the legal tools actually are. Normally, the province has limited our zoning tools to controlling the shape of the box rather than what goes on inside the box. We have some creative approaches that we're looking at that may try to address the diversity of unit typologies, and we are looking at the legality of that, and that would be part of our final proposal. But there's a fair bit of work to do to assess the legality of some of our ideas. But we certainly hear the point, understand it, and are trying to find a solution. As it relates to the broader amenities question, which is really, with all due respect, not exclusively the R4 study, it can't in itself solve that problem. We're very aware of that concern. And if I would just refer committee members to the IPD we presented today on our comments to the province on the new community benefits framework legislation. And what we've asked the province to be able to do in that is they need to tweak the proposal to allow us is to have area-specific community benefits charges in parts of the city, much like we do with development charges, so that if we have an area that has a deficit of major community amenities, and we're intensifying, we can apply a area-specific community benefits charge to raise money through new development to improve and augment the amenities in the area to deal with that growth. And those things actually are directly correlated. So it's what we do in the new community benefits bylaw that will help us solve this problem that you have raised and we're very sympathetic to. But we do need the province to give us the tools we need in the way they frame this. And that's why the comments we just provided the province are extremely important. So Chair, I just wanted to conclude that we understand these comments. We're trying to address them in the various processes, and we will continue to work with the council sponsors and certainly take into account further comments from the public.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Mr. Willis. And so I think that's it. Mr. Mormon, you don't need to say anything more, correct?
No, ma'am, I'm fine.
Perfect. So I think on this, do we have any separate motion on this one? No. Correct?
No.
Okay, so is this report received?
Received.
Thank you. Because we already had that joint motion that Vice Chair Gower put forward, and we voted on that. So the next item is item number 6, the provincial policy statement. And let's see. Don Herwire and Steve Willis are presenting on this item. And it's an update that you're giving us on the new 2020 provincial policy statement. And I think that this is the first opportunity you've had to give us that update since it occurred, correct?
That's correct, Madam Chair. Just wait for the, okay. Can everyone see the deck?
Yep.
All right. So next slide, please, Emily. So as you may recall, the city provided comments to the province on the draft PPS back in the fall of 2019. And as the chair mentioned, the new 2020 PPS will be in effect in less than a month on May 1st. And that will apply to all planning decisions, regardless of application date and so on. So in terms of the new PPS, just a reminder of the stated goals. They're basically to encourage an increase in the mix and supply of housing, very topical in terms of our discussion on the R4, to protect the environment and public safety. They're proposing to reduce barriers and costs for development and provide some greater certainty where there were some areas of confusion previously. They're also intended to support our rural, northern, and Indigenous communities, and an economic development lens supporting our local economies and job creation opportunities. Next slide, please. So in terms of housing, a few key changes. The minimum residential supply in years is extended from the 10 years in the 2014 PPS to now 15 years. And they also extended the time horizon from 20 years to 25 years. And that was one of the specific asks that the city made to the province in terms of assisting with our planning, and is consistent with what we are proposing in the new official plan. The policies also provide further encouragement to residential intensification, and specifically, again, picking up on previous discussion, speaks to previously developed areas where that intensification needs to happen. There's even further support for transit supportive development, intensification and infrastructure planning, and again, looking at ways to accommodate a larger supply and range of housing options and types. There's also reference to a market-based approach to housing options, and there's some information that was added to provide some clarity to what that means for us moving forward. Next slide. In terms of our employment areas, there's a further emphasis on protection for those larger industrial manufacturing type uses, probably more prevalent in the GTA, but the intent there is to prohibit incompatible uses, residential uses, sensitive land uses, and also provide for an appropriate transition where you have non-adjacent employment lands. The policies also promote and facilitate economic investment in sites. There's an encouragement to be strategic in terms of our investment opportunities, and looking at sites for key employment type uses, and reduce the barriers for that type of investment and on those sites. Excuse me, the policies also speak to a broader mix of uses. So for those non-manufacturing type employment areas, it contemplates more of a mixed use, a more balanced type of land use framework, which is also very consistent with where we're heading through our official plan review. And one further change is that it, for employment areas specifically, it says municipalities may plan beyond that 25-year time horizon. We're seeking a little further clarity from the ministry on what that means, given the broader 25-year time horizon in the PPS, but what that means for employment areas. Next slide. In terms of increased flexibility, one of the stated objectives, there's a couple specifics I'll highlight. It provides for flexibility for very minor urban expansions outside of a comprehensive review. There we go. Under very specific circumstances, like if it supports a municipality's intensification and redevelopment targets, and there's a no net increase in land. So that could be a swap of land that's determined not to be suitable for very strategic reasons. There's also more flexibility for planning major facilities and sensitive land uses where there is some issues that can be mitigated. One further change in terms of one of the requests the city made was that we're seeking for some more clarity in terms of how we consult and engage with our Indigenous communities, and that was provided in terms of the PPS, where it's very focused on cultural heritage and archaeological resources, and more specific direction on how we engage with our Indigenous communities. Next slide. In terms of energy conservation, air quality, and climate change, there was stronger and additional language added for the impacts of a changing climate. And that was also one of the specific requests that the city made based on our experience over the last number of years in terms of the impacts of the changing climate that we've certainly seen at the City of Ottawa. Couple minor changes. They add district energy as a scenario, I guess emerging scenario to the energy supply policies. And it also added specific terms in terms of green infrastructure and transit supportive development and intensification. Next slide. In terms of supporting our economy and job creation, the new PPS speaks to optimizing investment in our transit infrastructure, including specifically mentioning air rights and development in proximity to our stations. As mentioned previously, it protects our industrial and manufacturing uses from sensitive and incompatible land uses. And again, it encourages us to be, looking to opportunities for economic investment, strategic sites for investment, and so on. A more minor issue is there's a specific direction to encourage municipalities to look at the local reuse of excess soil to avoid the transportation costs and impacts on our landfills and so on. So that was a specific direction that was added. Next slide. In terms of our rural and agricultural lands, as it relates to our natural heritage resources, the water policies, agricultural and mineral aggregate resources, there was very little change. The new PPS is substantially unchanged from the previous one, so not a lot of change in terms of protection of environment and so on. In terms of changes that were made, there was an increased focus on recreational tourism and other economic development opportunities that should be promoted. There was a definition added for on-farm diversified uses. That again is consistent with one of the policy directions in our draft official plan process. And there was a new definition for an agricultural system approach and agri-food network, which offers flexibility and promotes, thriving agricultural sector. So it, again, very much in line with some of the initiatives that we're currently pursuing with our, the smart farm and so on. So that's embedded in the PPS, which is helpful. Next slide. So just in summary, I would characterize the changes that were made to the PPS as positive. There's certainly some additional certainty provided around land development, but there was also opportunities for some flexibility where appropriate that the city did not have previously. We didn't get everything we asked for, but there were a significant number of changes that responded to the comments the city provided. And just to conclude, the changes do align very well with the official plan, 5 big moves, and our preliminary policy directions that were approved in December. So thank you for that, and I'll turn it back to the chair.
You're muted, Chair.
Oh, look at Scott Moffat. Hi. How are you? Look at, he's got the kids there. Oh, where'd they go? Too bad. Highlight of the meeting. Okay, so who does want to speak? Councillor Leeper?
Councillor Gower?
Councillor Judas? So Leeper, Judas. Okay, so let's start with you, Councillor Leeper.
Thanks. Quick question. I've taken a brief look at the new provincial policy statement, and there's nothing unexpected in there. One thing you did say: increased flexibility for minor land use expansions. Can you give us some color on that?
Yeah, certainly. So as I mentioned, the policy provides for that opportunity to add additional land to the urban area outside of a comprehensive review, but there's very specific criteria, including a no net increase in terms of that land. So it has to be land out and in. It also has to be consistent with the municipality's goals supporting intensification, or has to be a very legitimate reason. And then there's a couple other preconditions to that in terms of servicing and just planning of infrastructure. So it's narrow, but it does provide an opportunity in limited cases.
So even delving a little bit below that, I mean, what kind of process would we be looking for or looking at if there were going to be a minor expansion? Is that so that comes down to city council now to be able to make that decision without sign off from the minister, or?
That's correct. It would be through an official plan amendment process.
Thank you.
For Councillor Dudas.
Perfect. I was happy to hear that this aligns closely with the OP that you're working on, but I was curious, you mentioned that there are things that you were asking for that you didn't see in this policy document. I'm just wondering if you could elaborate on that a little bit.
Chair, it's Steve Willis, if I may answer that question. We had asked for some specific flexibility as it related to rural economic development in rural areas and the provision of servicing to support some of the rural industrial operations where it was in close proximity to the city boundary. The province did not give us explicitly what we asked for, but in some conversations with the ministry, they understand Ottawa's situation and have given us some advice about how we can address some of those problems. But it was really in the rural economic development side that we didn't get what we asked for.
And that was it? Well, I mean, that's big, but I mean, that was about the extent of it?
I'll ask Dawn to see if there's anything else. I mean, I think a lot of our comments were requesting clarification, which we largely did get. There's some stuff that we won't get clarification until they issue implementation guidelines, so we're told it may be coming. So Dawn, I don't know if I've missed anything, if you could add, please.
Yeah. No, Steve, thanks. That's certainly the major issue. There was some very minor concerns about, what the term market-based and housing is. There was some clarity provided, but as Steve said, we expect more clarification as Bolton's come out. There was also one request for a little more flexibility on city uses in lands outside the urban area that was not provided, but very, I would say, in the big picture, minor issues.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Is this item received then? Yes? No dissents on receiving? Okay. Thank you. All right, now we're going to 25 Grant Street. And it's the zoning bylaw amendment. A zoning amendment is sought to permit a 3-story, 8-unit, low-rise apartment building on the north side of Grant Street in Hintonburg on a property occupied by a single detached home. And we have received correspondence from Linda Hode, Hintonburg Community Association. Linda Hode, who is the Hintonburg, well, she's not the only one who is, but you know what I'm saying. She's representing, in our mind, she is Hintonburg Community Association. Sorry, Jay. Then we also had an email from Chris Jalkotsi, Planning by People is the applicant, and from Brenda Maharal, the director of ABC Daycare Center. Yeah, so held by Councillor Leeper. And anyone else have any questions? Let me know. Otherwise, Councillor Leeper, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. And Melody, can I just ask you to put the HCA submission that we spoke about earlier up on screen?
Will do.
Thank you. Good timing. The garbage truck just finished going by. So we just, colleagues, we just received a presentation on the R4. 25 Grant Street is in this junior R4 that we're talking about, where the direction of the R4 review right now would see the allowed density go from 4 units to 8. And that's obviously a major part of the application that is being made here by the developer. I have a really strong concern though. The thrust of the consultation and the information that planners have been giving to people in the course of their consultation on the R4 review, and we had a very well attended session. Thank you very much to Tim and David and Robert for doing that recently, in which they were talking about allowing the doubling of density within permitted currently permitted building envelopes. So the message that residents have been getting is that we're going to increase the density. but don't worry, because we're not going to increase the size of the buildings. And we've been hearing a really strong message from staff to say that they want to hold the line on the envelopes, so that the currently permitted building envelope is not going to become a floor from which we begin to negotiate taller heights, bigger footprints in terms of setbacks. It really is staff's intention to hold the line on the existing building envelope. The Hintonburg Community Association has not objected to the increase in density on this site from the 4 to the 8 units. What they are opposed to is that in order to accommodate those 8 units, the builder is looking for a staircase on the side that is going to project further into the yard than is currently allowed by the zoning. And the message that we are hearing is conflicted with what planners have been telling us about the new R4 rules. If planners and the city intend for the new R4 doubling the density in the junior R4s to move ahead without growing the building envelope, that helps reassure people that at least with this doubling of the density, at least the buildings aren't going to get bigger, and that council is going to have their back on enforcing that. This application is one of the first that will move ahead in the context of those new R4 rules, and it's occurring in the context of a public consultation process that has said we're going to hold the line on the building envelope. On my screen right now, I apologize, I could be having a poor internet connection, but the line, I'm going to pull it up on my own screen here. In the technical studies for the R4 review, it was confirmed that 8-unit apartment buildings, which are proposed to be permitted, can be accommodated on lots smaller than this within the currently permitted building envelope. That's what we're looking for. As we move forward in the R4, there is some good support for increasing the density of the R4 zone in Hintonburg and Mechanicsville, but not if that's going to mean increasing the building envelope. If staff intend to allow for the building envelope to increase, then we need to have a very different consultation, because that's not the consultation, it's not the message that residents are hearing today. Melody, I can get you to take that off screen, but what I am hoping is that colleagues will support me in rejecting this. I believe that there is a way for the developer to accommodate this building within the building permitted building envelope by narrowing the parking or shifting the stairs over, changing the building footprint in order to fall within the intent of the new R4 rules, which is to accommodate that greater density within currently permitted building envelopes. Chair, that was what I had to ask.
Thank you very much, Councillor Leeper, and you know, thank you as always. You know, we don't have surprises. We have opportunities to discuss this in advance. You're always like very good at that, and I got to tell you, we appreciate it, especially on a day like today. So, does anyone else want to speak to this item? You see anything? Anyone, Melody?
No, nothing.
Okay. I don't think any of the staff wanted to speak to it.
Is Scott trying to get on board?
Oh, and Councillor Gower now.
You want to speak to it, Glenn?
A quick question for staff, because it's something that Councillor Leeper mentioned. The possibility of reducing the area allotted for parking. Could staff just comment on if that was considered, or how staff are evaluating that?
All right, Councillor Harder. Thank you, Councillor Harder, Councillor Gower, members of committee. Just with respect to the parking, this proposal is having parking in the side yard, the opposite side yard where the proposed stairs are. It is to be a tandem parking. There is it on the side. They're not asking for any relief to the parking requirements being provided. Mind you, the zoning bylaw does not require parking for units that are under 12, although they are, in this instance, providing those two there. But just to say, with respect to the R4, there is one of the issues, or one of the emphasis is on green space in the front yard, for example. Their parking is in conformance with the zoning bylaw. They do have a lot of green space in the front yard, as well as the rear yard, and a spot for bicycle parking in the back. The way the parking is provided, there's still the opportunity to get to the backyard to reach where garbage might be is internal, but brought out through the side yard. So in this instance, parking is not considered to be an issue with respect to the proposed development.
But I guess
Thank you.
In terms of feasibility, in terms of, could the parking area be narrowed, or is it at the maximum or minimum? I just don't understand how, based on what Councillor Leeper said, could the building just be shifted to reduce the parking? I think that's what he said. Is that something that planning staff looked at or considered, or how would you consider that as part of this evaluation of the application?
Madam Chair, with respect to the parking and how this will be looked at, and we would see that they're providing parking that's in accordance with the bylaw. We would look at if they had parking there, is there still the opportunity for access to the rear yard? Is still ability to get garbage out of the back? They could shift the building over, of course, but from the planning perspective, the parking that's being there in accordance with the bylaw, the building would not need to shift. The issue of the stairs on the other side, you can have stairs in the side yard. R4 relates to not having stairs in the rear yard. What we take a look at is, through the site plan process, can those stairs be screened? Yes, they can be screened. What is the impact on the building next door, which is about 3 meters away? In our opinion, it is minimal. So does the building need to be moved over to eliminate the parking? In looking at this, we have looked at it through the zoning process, and the answer would have been no, Madam Chair. The parking is fine on the site. It does conform with the zoning. And the impact of having the building where it's located with respect to all the other yards, including the side yard with the stairs, is minimal on the adjacent properties. So with respect to eliminating the parking, it's our position that they do not need to do so.
And you're looking too at the distance, the side of the building that has the stairs. You're also looking at the distance that the current neighboring home is, and you've determined, I think you've determined that there's sufficient distance between the existing home and where the edge of this stairway would be. Is that right?
Yes, Madam Chair, it's about 3 meters. And with the screened stairs and they're secondary stairs that provide access to the amenity areas on the roof and also to the ground, but they're secondary stairs, and they'll be, as I said, about 3 meters away from the home that's next door.
Okay, thanks for the clarification.
All right, Councillor Moffat and then Councillor Leeper. Councillor Moffat?
I'm okay, so essentially what Doug just mentioned was kind of what I was looking at. Obviously, we had an exchange, a number of us prior to the meeting, in which Doug laid out some of the criteria for why staff supported it, particularly related to the stairwell. And he touched on that just now in response to Glenn, so I'm good.
Perfect. Councillor Leeper?
Just a quick question for Doug, and I don't know the answer to this. If the house next door were to be purchased and torn down for a new infill, which is very likely, this street will be completely infilled within the decade, what would be the minimum side yard setback that they would have? I guess 1.2 meters? You're on mute, sorry.
I must have hit mute when Melody hit.
Thank you. Madam Chair, I was just saying that the side yard would be about 4 feet or 5 feet, 1.2 to 1.5 meters.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. Well, thank you, everybody, for your comments.
Sure, I'll call for yeas and nays on that. I'll call for yeas and nays on that, please.
No problem. So yeas and nays on 25 Grant Street. Councillor Dudas.
Yay.
Councillor Shirelli. Councillor Tierney.
Yes.
Councillor Leeper.
No.
Councillor Brockington.
Yes.
Counselor Moffat,
Yes.
Counselor Hughley,
Yes.
Vice Chair Gower,
Yes.
and myself, yes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 to 1. Thank you very much. Okay, where are we going next? I think we're going home, almost.
I think you're going to your notice of motion next.
Yeah, we're on the same page. Hard to believe.
Madam Chair, before
Yeah.
you do.
Yes, Councillor Hughley?
If I could, item number 7, the modification to the official plan amendment number 136. It was listed there as only applying to Kannada North, but I had talked to staff beforehand, and I'll say a fair bit of this was in my ward. I was supportive of the report, but I see on the agenda it only shows the north. I think in fairness, it should show that it applies to both wards in case anybody from the public is following along.
Okay, good point. So you're talking about on the agenda itself where on the report? Okay, and we run into that quite often with Councillor Moffat and myself and Councillor Gower and Councillor Moffat. A little bit, I think, with Councillor El Shantiri and Councillor Suds probably, or maybe even Councillor Moffat. Anyways, that will be corrected with the ward boundary review, we're hoping, but that's a while off. Okay.
Chair, I can make a note in the minutes as well.
Perfect. That's great. Thanks for raising that, Councillor Hughley.
Okay.
Okay, so now we do have a notice of motion, and Vice Chair Gower is going to move the notice of motion, and you should read the whole motion because normally we wouldn't bother with the notice, but in this case, in these times, please go ahead.
Okay. So this is a notice of motion for our next meeting. Whereas the City of Ottawa's zoning bylaw sets parking standards for employment uses based on the physical size of a building, parking spaces required per square meters of gross floor area. And whereas the General Manager of Planning, Infrastructure and Economic Development has concerns that this method of calculating parking is leading to certain uses having an oversupply of parking, which has negative environmental consequences and could lead to overbuilt infrastructure. And whereas non-office employment patterns are changing based on space utilization, automation, and more use of shift work. And whereas when city economic development staff pursue employment opportunities, potential applicants find the process of seeking a variance or rezoning to customize parking to their uses as a disincentive to picking sites in Ottawa. Therefore, be it resolved that Planning Committee recommend to Council that staff be directed to bring forward a scoped review of the methodology for calculating minimum parking standards for non-office employment uses to allow further relationship between the nature of the use and the required parking supply.
Thank you. Okay, so that's a notice of motion, and we'll see that May 14th. Before. So thanks, Mr. Willis, for asking for that. Okay, so I wanted to, in any inquiries, anybody? Okay, so in other business, I wanted to address something that came in to some of us during this meeting. And it was, and I'm going to be specific about it, and I'm going to read it into the record because not all of you who are on the committee received it. And the ones that didn't receive it would be Councillor Hughley, Councillor Dudas, Councillor Moffat, and Councillor Tierney. And I know that throughout this meeting, I have mentioned quite a few times that we did receive communications from Trevor Hca. And so he took the time to write to me during this meeting. And I'm going to read it into the record. And because you're copied, Ms. Duffany, you can certainly include it. But it has to do with the email that he sent yesterday, which the rest of you on the committee were copied, as well as a lot of other people. And, you know, I have no problem with you sharing the email because he's sent it in this fashion, including the media. Make sure you capture anyone that he sent this to. Good morning, Jan. While I do very much appreciate your lengthy response in brackets that was sent to me at 8:30 p.m. last which I read late last night, I find the city's approach to this to be inadequate. It appears, and this should come as no surprise, that the technology exists to allow for live public delegations, but the city has not properly made this opportunity available to the public. I can appreciate that these are trying times, and I know everyone is adjusting to shifting ground. But with all the city's resources in the clerk's office and elsewhere, I urge you all to please prioritize accommodating live public delegations online or over the phone from this day forward. So on the comment to me that I was late in sending it, when you sent that yesterday, there were 5 questions that, and therefore 5 different pieces that you were speaking to. Therefore, I sent it as the chair to all of the staff people that would need to comment. They not only having to do that job in responding to me, took the due diligence to get the best information that they could pull together to send to me so that I could then put it into an email to send to you. So I did apologize when I sent it last night, but you know what? This is a time when we're doing our best. We're all doing our best, including me. And I have 65,000 people, at least, a lot going on with the pandemic and trying to keep up to speed with that and make sure that my residents have my duties with planning, have my duties with many, many things that we all are involved with. And what I think I object to most is the fact that your comments with regard to what the staff, I think it's maybe just implied, maybe it's only against me, I don't know. But the fact that, you're pointing out the technology exists, and I can tell you that the IT department has been working for a couple of weeks now steadfastly with the city clerk's department to try and make this work. Public consultation is absolutely paramount importance to us in this city. We do our very best all the time. There was a consideration not to have the meeting today, but when I asked staff if it would be better if we were to hold off on that, I was told, no, Chair, this is going to be invaluable for us to learn what works, what doesn't work, and what we can add. Because on May the 11th, we have a very important public delegation heavy, I would expect, joint meeting of the Planning Committee and of the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee. And it's absolutely important that we are able to manage that to the very best of our ability. So thank you, staff. A lot of effort has gone into this. I know Vice Chair Gower would agree that we have really worked hard on trying to do our best to pull today off. And honestly, I think that it went better than I expected it to. But we have a lot more work to do before May the 11th. And just in closing, and if I didn't say it, I do want his response today to be included as part of the record. In closing, I would say that May the 14th, which will be our next planning committee. So we're not going to have the meeting on the 23rd that was previously scheduled. Again, for these same reasons, we want to do the best that we can. And I will also say that in Ontario, we're unique, and other larger centers are watching us to see how we're managing this so that they can keep their engine moving forward. It's absolutely important. So I thank everybody for their attention today. And and in particular, as I said, staff, because a very large team pulled to get today together. And Ms. Duffany, I want to personally thank you for your efforts. Does anyone, anyone else have any other business?
Councillor Leeper.
Councillor Leeper.
Chair, just to say thank you. It is the first Zoom meeting I've seen of a legislative body. It's not easy. This is challenging, but I think we made a number of decisions according to the statutes that guide us that are important to take. Well done, and thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Leeper, and thank you to everybody that participated. We'll see you hopefully on May the 11th starting at 9 o'clock. Where we consider the new official plan growth management strategy. Then our next regular meeting, if we can call it regular, I mean, we're also using this as a template to how best be able to go forward with our other very important standing committees. So the next regular planning committee will be May 14th. Thanks, everyone. We're adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.